This is my collection of model cars. I've been collecting them for around 20 years now, but I've never had anywhere to actually put them. Until now. I've taken the plunge and bought this, a 2-meter tall glass case. Now my cars will be fully on display. They deserve it. I have quite recently bought my first house and I've had to move all my stuff out of my childhood home up in Scotland, and it was only then I realised just how many of these cars I've collected. I reckon there's over 30 1-18s here, and you'll see how they're all kind of categorised in a bit once we put them on display. But on top of these, I've also got some big boys downstairs, like 1-5s, 1-8s, and then there's some smaller stuff that I've collected over the years, some really niche stuff that's, we'll see if it all fits in there. I bought the biggest glass case I could literally fit up my stairs, but it might not even be big enough. There might need to be a charity shop run. We'll see. Let's crack on. Some of these cars I've literally had since I was about 10. Other ones I've picked up fairly recently. Basically every single car show I go to, I make sure to find the model car stands and see what they've got. But I've got more and more picky over the years. That's Le Mans Classic. This was the M5 trip to the Nürburgring. There's some real DRIVETRIBE history going on with some of these cars. Another thing, because I've been collecting cars for this length of time, I've had different sources of money throughout. Some of them are really quite cheap. For example, this Jag here's a Hot Wheels. You know, that's just a few quid really. Some of these are adult models. We'll get to them in a bit. Let's just get them all downstairs and then suss it out from there. We go again. It's bad that I forget I've got certain models. I'm like, oh yeah, that one. Oh, this is a dangerous one. That Stuart Grand Prix wants to completely ruin my day. Me and you filmed with that car just a few weeks ago. Remember that? Good one. Nobody's watched the video, but you know, link in description. I think we've just got one more trip. That should be it. As far as I'm aware, that's every car I want in the glass case, down by the glass case. Do not ruin your childhood, Michael. That's a very expensive Spark model that has just shat it down the stairs. Please tell me his little radio aerials have not come off, otherwise my OCD will want him to go in the bin. This is an XJR14, super rare model. Nope, they're intact. Can you see that? I have to come to the light. Do you see his little antennae on top there? Sorry, he's a wee bit dusty. That's why he's going in there. They're intact. He survived a 70G crash. Right. All of that has got to somehow fit in that. Because there's so many cars here and I want them to be named, I think the next thing I'm going to have to do is actually get a notepad out and start jotting down what each one is and create a little tab for it, like a little triangle of paper with Lancia Stratos put on it, for example, so that when it goes in, he gets his little label and it's all laid out nicely. That will make sense when it comes to one of the strands of my collection especially. Let's do that. We'll skip that though, because that's boring. That's just homework. There's a lot of very illustrious cars in here, but the fact I'm writing MG ZR160 makes me very happy. Oh, that's nice. That is lovely. This is all my dead skin from the last 20 years. We do have a casualty. This is a Sauber C23 Felipe Massa, and it broke before it got to me. When it arrived in the post, its front wing was detached. So got some poly cement, gonna get him on. It's a lovely model otherwise. Let's get him reattached, get him in the case. Yeah, that looks about right. They're such cool liveries, these. Sorry, my fingers are in the way, but sort of turquoise Petronas, the blue of Sauber themselves, and then the Red Bull on top. I'll tell that whole story once they're all in there. We're close. This is the final Formula One car to go into the case. Okay, modern Formula One done. Let's move on to road cars. Let's do some road cars. We've been at it 3 hours now. We've very carefully unboxed all of my cars. Let me show you around my model car collection. Right, I'm going to take you guys from the top and head down. This is quite a big moment for me because a lot of these cars have been away in boxes, and I've kept restrained, I've kept my cool, I've left them in their boxes. This is literally the first time they've been out and I've been able to see them fully. So let's start from the top. Now, a lot of you guys will know I'm quite into Red Bull. And what I wanted to do was cover the full story of Red Bull in Formula One. Now, a lot of people would just narrow it down to, well, they used to be Jaguar and then they bought Jaguar for £1 and became Red Bull Racing. I've gone further back and geekier than that. Technically, the first F1 driver to be sponsored by Red Bull was Gerhard Berger in a Ferrari, which is kind of a weird thing to think about. But after sponsoring him, they then moved on to sponsoring a team, and they went for Sauber. So this car here, the Sauber C14, what a pretty car that is. It's got the Ford HB V8 in it, and it's the C14. That was the first car that had Red Bull sponsorship on it in Formula One. That is Heinz-Harald Frentzen in there. It started there, and I've basically covered off as many Saubers and then further into the story of Red Bull as I can. Now, some of you will say that they also did Arrows. They did. I've simply not got the space for it. So let me take you through the Saubers. I've got C14, C15, C16, and then I haven't managed to purchase yet a 17, 18 or 19, but I then have a C20, a C22 and a C23. So that's everyone from Heinz-Harald Frentzen right through to Felipe Massa at the end here. Now, the naming convention is quite weird because, you know, C14, what does that connect with? Was there 13 F1 cars before? No, Sauber themselves were in Formula One and the World Endurance Championship. So the Sauber, the famous Group C cars, Sauber C9 and C11, kind of fit into this story. You could do a whole cabinet just based off of Sauber. But Red Bull Formula One started with the C14 and then expanded all the way through. I really like the liveries. They were quite busy at the time compared to some of the others, but they look so good now, and the lighting in this glass case makes them look awesome. It scares me. I need to fill out some more spaces to complete it. Maybe I just stay calm and leave it as is. I've got the bookends of Sauber and Red Bull. Maybe I should leave it the way it is. But then the story continues down here. We kind of move away from the Red Bull sponsorship and we start following the actual architecture of the team. So we've got the Stewart Grand Prix. In another recent More DRIVETRIBE video when we were at M Sport, they had an what was it? I think it was an SF1 in their sort of front dealership. So this was Jackie Stewart's team, the Scottish Formula One team. You can see the tartan liveries on the cars, Rubens Barrichello, Johnny Herbert, and they actually won a race. They won the European Grand Prix. So by this point, we've got 3-litre Cosworth V10s. Started as Stewart Grand Prix, and then Ford came along. They were supplying the engines for them. They wanted a full factory team. But we weren't going to call it Ford. They had just bought Jaguar. So they decided to create Jaguar Formula One. They bought the team from Jackie Stewart, and you go from Stewart Grand Prix into the Jaguars. Now, Jaguar F1, that's the epitome for me. Like, if I was to pick any motorsport team, any racing team that I support, it was Jaguar Formula One, especially Eddie Irvine. So this R1 is a special one. I think that is the 1/18 scale car I have owned for the longest out of everything in here. There's one elephant in the room. I've actually bought 2 R1s. So this is a Niki Lauda one. He can probably go. So suddenly there's space for another car. You can see I've totally filled this thing out. It's worked perfectly with the exact amount of cars I've got, but I now don't have room for any others. So, transitioning from Jaguar, you then end up with the Red Bulls. I've got an RB1 and an RB2, Coulthard and Clean. Now, I could then keep going and go RB3, 4, 5 and just this whole thing could be Red Bulls. But again, I just want to restrain it. This car here is technically still a Jag. So it's technically still an R5, but just with some developments. It was RB3 when Adrian Newey fully got a clean sheet design, and the Red Bulls that we know today that went on to win so many championships happened. So I've stopped it at the final Jag Red Bull. So these first two shelves are my incredibly geeky insight to Red Bull in Formula One, their whole journey. And that kind of explains why you see me in my hats, you see me drinking it a lot. It's not just the brand, I'm genuinely obsessed with the team and how they've done what they've done in Formula One, starting with just handing Gerhard Berger a can to now owning a team winning championships. It's such a cool story and I absolutely love it. Leaving Formula One behind, we then move on to what I'm going to call the Porsche shelf. Now we're going to get on to the fact that I'm a massive Jag man outside of Formula One as well, the Le Mans cars. And kind of, if you are a silk cut Jag Le Mans fan, Porsche's the enemy, but then you quickly learn that they're actually amazing at what they do. So over the years, I've got more and more into Porsche endurance cars. I'm not a big 917 fan. It's not really my era, but I remember seeing that model at a car show and thinking, I have to have it. A Gulf 917K. It's tiny compared to the other cars we're about to compare it to. But yeah, it looks so good now in the cabinet with that lighting. Then I've got two double whammies. This may be where I need to kind of weigh up which one of each I keep. But I've got two Porsche RS Spyders. Now, I love an engine story. You guys all know I'm an engine guy. I really like learning racing cars that become road car engines, and these two here are the key to the 918 Spider. So the Porsche RS Spider, they were LMP2 cars that were so aerodynamically efficient, so much downforce created from these cars, and such great engines in the back of them, they rivaled LMP1 cars, especially over in the States. They're amazing pieces of kit. Now this one here, the Merkstein, sorry if I've not pronounced that correctly, this purple livery, this car still races. If you go to the Silverstone Classic, you will see this RS Spider winning races still. It's really, really cool. These cars are from like 2008-ish. And I remember seeing this car here on our Nürburgring trip with DRIVETRIBE, taking our M5 touring around the track. I remember seeing this in that petrol station that has on the model cars. This is a prototype, like test livery RS Spider, and I must say, I think it's potentially my favourite car in this entire glass case here. The finish on it is immaculate. It's supposed to be like bare carbon. The purple and white is cool, but this is unbelievable, and if I'm really careful, I didn't actually know it did this. The engine cover comes off. You should feel the weight in that. That's a really nice piece of, I guess, die cast with a sort of carbon finish on it. And you can see in to that V8 engine. I think it was a 4.6 litre in this car, screaming V8 endurance engine that then got taken, roadified, and ended up in the 918 Spider. That's why that engine's so nuts. It's because it came from an LMP2 race car. Yeah, that one's going to be hard to beat. Kind of weird coming from a Jag man, but you learn to respect the enemy. Talking of engines, these next two cars were again my just entry into how cool Porsche were. A lot of my early DriveTribe content when I was a writer before video was on the 919 hybrid. 2 litre V4 engines. We've never really seen it before, we've never seen it since. 500 horsepower, 2 litre turbo V4s. Unbelievable. I'm really hoping we can get to Germany this year. I'm in chats with Porsche for us to get stuck in proper geeky walkarounds of a 919. But yeah, Le Mans winners, just unreal pieces of kit. LMP1 hybrid was so far ahead of the game back then, to be more technically advanced than the F1 cars at the time, and faster in some cases than F1. If you've watched the Spa lap and the Evo of these, that's one car that could potentially replace one of these doubles, is the 919 Evo. That would be cool. I think they do a model of that. We'll see. Then the Porsche stuff kind of comes to an end, and it's just two endurance cars that I've loved the look of and loved the liveries. The Aston Martin DBR 1-2. Aston had done really well with the DBR 9, the GT1 car, and they decided to go that next level up to full prototype LMP1, and this was the result. Same engine as the DBR 9, 6-litre V12, but in a car that looks like that. It's a Lola, the actual chassis, but just getting that Aston Martin lip grille on the front of it with 007 as the race number, Gulf livery. What a car that is. And then this one here, Ben Collins actually bought me this on our road trip to Le Mans. We went for the Le Mans Classic, and we went away and bought each other gifts. I bought him some really nice high quality driving gloves, and he bought me this Glickenhaus 007 LMH. Super cool thing. Again, they're kind of like a privateer from America that took on the big boys. It was never that quick. It never really did that well, especially at Le Mans, but I just think it's a great looking car. The aero on it, the rear wing, is kind of like the WRC rear wing aero when it went nuts a few years ago. These strakes all along it, kind of Subaru-esque. It's a great looking car. It's a bit of an oddity in this collection, but it deserves to be in there. Cracking livery. Next shelf down continues with endurance racing to start with. So Peugeot 905, Bentley Speed 8 and Jaguar XJR9. Arguably they should be the other way around if we're kind of going in timeline order. Yeah, V10, the last of the line of the Group Cs. It's such a great design. The size of that rear wing relative to the rest of the car is absolutely enormous. If you ever heard of one of these, because there's a couple of these racing in classic racing still, go to Le Mans Classic actually this year, you will see at least one of them thundering around the track with that V10. Absolute beast. As a Brit, 2003 Bentley Speed 8, it was a very, very special moment for British motorsport, dominated by Audi at Le Mans, and then the Bentley, which, you know, arguably had a lot to do with Audi as well, came along and took the win. What I love about this XJR9 is it's not a silk cut. Someone, I don't know why, has decided to make this model in British Racing Green with gold livery on it. It looks awesome. It is such a beautiful model. This one was quite spenny because, kind of like the RS Spider, it's quite delicate to do it, but you can remove the rear of the car and see into that V12. The detail is unbelievable. Also, I actually had to attach the rear wing that came in the package separate and actually had to be assembled. Same with the aerial in the middle. It is a delicate, delicate model, but I absolutely love it. And the fact it's a bit alternative, we'll get to the actual silk cuts later. This is, you know, it's almost like a one-of-one model. Someone's just thought, I'm going to paint it green. I absolutely love it. Then it starts to just be the 1-18s that I like. So it starts to go a wee bit rogue. Kind of following on from the Red Bull story, I've always supported their kind of subsidiary teams as well. So Toro Rosso, Alpha Tauri. Now this was the car that Pierre Gasly won in Monza. It's quite cool that Monza has become the race that team wins at. There was Vettel in the Toro Rosso, and then along came Gasly in the AT01. So cool looking car. I do like white, so this livery really popped for me. I also bought that one at the Nürburgring. That was an expensive trip for me, that one. Great looking car, again, very delicate. And look at the size of it. These are all 1-18s. Look at the size of that compared to a Jim Clark Lotus 49. Being a Scotsman, not having a Jim Clark car in your model car collection is a bit sacrilege. So there he is, Lotus 49, Ford DFE, totally dominant car. And the DFE went on to win, what, a record amount of Grand Prix for an engine. Then we get the start of the road cars. Now, what I love about this manufacturer, Otto make super high quality models of what could be classed as really mundane cars, but they always tap into the niche stuff that's really going to have a kind of cult following to it. So this is one of my dream cars. It's not quite the colour I would go for, but it's an MG ZR160 in trophy blue. It's my favourite hot hatch, never mind a GTI or 205 or any of that. I would go for an MG ZR160, and it's amazing that a 1-18 model of this quality exists of that car. I love it. And then next to it, a Ford Racing Puma. That is another kind of attainable dream car of mine. I love the way they sit, the way Tickford kind of made them wide body, widened the track on them to make it rally car-esque. They're a really cool car, designed by Ian Callum. Yeah, pretty legendary. So it's cool. The shelf is a bit random, but to have these two on the end, it makes me very, very happy. Now on to the bottom shelf. This is where it gets expensive. Down here is, yeah, it's what I'd call the big boy shelf. And I've had to put these cars down here because especially this one is quite heavy and I don't want it up on a glass shelf. So from left to right, well, these two, either side, are XJR11s. So everyone knows the XJR9, the one that won Le Mans. Then the XJR12 went on to win in 1990, but these ones are the twin turbo V6 cars. So everyone thinks of Silkcut Jag as the big 7-litre V12 jobs. These guys decided to take on Porsche with twin turbo V6s. Now, everyone says that the V6 and the XC220 came from the Metro 6R4 and then twin turbocharged. It actually came from these, the JV6. I think there's still some Austin Metro derivative to these engines, but you could say the XC220's actually got the engine from a Group C car, which is a bit cooler. These things were absolute monsters. Turn them up to 800-900 horsepower. There's some epic images of these taking on the Saubers in sort of 89, 90. Absolutely unreal cars. And these models, I don't know why someone made them. You'd think it would always be the XJR9. It's kind of like my MG ZR up there. Why did they make XJR11s? But my God, I'm happy that they did. They're beautiful models. I've kept them in their cases because I just feel they need protected that bit further. And then in the middle of them, going back even further with the Jags, this is Jag's proper glory era, the Kyriakos Transporter. Now this vehicle is absolutely incredible. It sold for well over £1 million, the actual vehicle, a few years ago. It has, I think I'm going to get this right, it's a 3-cylinder, 2-stroke diesel engine that has 6 pistons. So each cylinder has 2 pistons that are opposing each other, almost like a boxer engine. But they're housed within the same cylinder. They kind of slide up and down it. 2-stroke diesel. Who thought of that? But it is one of the most iconic transporters, racing transporters ever. And it's become one of the most iconic models. Corgi made one of these in a much smaller scale. And then, I don't know what brand this one is, but they've made this absolute behemoth of an Kyriakos transporter. Again, being Scottish, Kyriakos are just such a legendary team for our country. What I love, and I didn't know if this was going to be the case, I bought an Kyriakos D-Type 1-18 to see if it would fit. Does 1-18 mean 1-18 across the board? And it turns out it fits perfectly. I would love to have a D-Type and a C-Type, but for whatever reason, the D-Types are quite reasonably priced. There's a few of them out there. Trying to find a 1-18 Kyriakos C-Type has been crazy. The prices are through the roof. So someone needs to come along and do a nice big production run of C-types, and then we will complete this. Instead, I've put one of my all-time great models from when I was a kid. This one has been a real survivor, the XK180. That car was supposed to be the F-Type back in the day. It was supposed to be a Jag production car. It never made it, although the concept is in the Jaguar part of the British Motor Museum. But really cool model, really cool design, and it just about fits on the Transporter. So it will stay there for now until I find an Kyriakos C-Type. It's very cool to see this all come together and be finished. It's exactly what I wanted it all to look like. This is where I've ended up, but this is where it all started. Over here are my first toy cars. And you can see where my kind of inspiration came from and what cars I'm now into, all based off of these three. So these two here, they actually belong to my dad. They are Corgis from back in the 60s. And they were then put in a big box for me to play with whenever I went round to Grandma and Granddad's house. They're battered, they're beaten, but my God, they've been used. They could do with a bit of restoration. Some new tyres needed for this Corgi. But yeah, these two XK120s, they set my brain on fire in terms of how cool Jaguars were. This Mark II was one of the first kind of nicer models I ever bought. It's had a bit of a beating. The leaper's gone, the little radio aerial. It's got some serious patina going on. But this was probably one of the first cars that was like, okay, I'm probably not going to play extensively with this. I just want it to look awesome on my windowsill. And now we are where we are with all of this. And then also I thought I'd show you guys this. This is me sitting on my dad's knee in his Rover 600. Starts to make even more sense now. The Jags and then the Rovers, and now have a 620 Ti, the hot turbo version of that car. And there I am, I must be 2 sitting there. So I like the kind of full circleness of all of this. It's very, very cool. Now, it all looks perfectly organized and in place, because if everything is perfectly fitted, there are quite a few cars that simply didn't make the cut. Let's quickly go over them. Only one 1-18 didn't make it, this Lancia Stratos. I remember buying it, it's a cool model, great color, but am I that enthused about it? Not really. Does it fit with what's in there? Not really. So this will either go to the DRIVETRIBE office, or if one of you guys want it, you can DM me, or it might just go to the charity shop and someone else can have their fun with it. There's also all of these 1-43s. It's always so tempting to just grab these because they're much cheaper than the 1-18s, and some of them are really nice. Like this Spark. Spark as a brand make really, really top quality 1-43s. So I've got a few Le Mans Jaguars that are Spark. And then this trio here, that's the Le Mans winning 1988 XJR9 in silk cut. And these were the other two that had that iconic image following it across the track. The quality of them, the detail in their engine bays, kind of like the big 1-18 in there. It's absolutely beautiful, but there's simply not space in that glass case for any of these. Now, despite everything I've talked about today, I do actually have a girlfriend. I share this house with her, and the rule was, yes, you can have your cars on display as long as they look good, as long as they're pretty. Hence why I've gone nuts with this fully lit glass case. But these, they might be pushing it, because realistically, these guys need their own shelf or proper shelving unit, or maybe glass case of their own. I think that might be pushing things a bit far. So they'll probably be boxed up for a while until this smooths over, we get used to it, and then I can hopefully go again. I hope you guys have enjoyed this more chill video, a proper insight into my brain, and tell me in the comments below, what do you think of my collection? And also, do you guys collect cars? Tell me what you guys collect. Do you follow a similar story to me, like the Red Bull story, or do you hone into a certain brand like Porsches or Jags? Tell me in the comments below, I definitely want to know. Make sure you guys are subscribed to our second channel, More DRIVETRIBE, and I'll see you in the next video.